Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and others. Today I was able to bribe one of my favorite teachers onto my podcast, the Hudson Gross Podcast, and I'm your host, Hudson Gross. Anyways, Mr. Buck is just an outstanding person. He does so many crazy things like dog sledding and teaching. Also, some other wacky stuff that we get into. Without further ado, Adam Buck. All right, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
How was your day today? Was it good?
Today was a really good day. I was on an undisclosed location in the Kootenays, and the fishing was tremendous.
Let's just get right into this. So, you're a dog sledder.
Yes.
So, I know that you have like a bunch of dogs.
Yeah.
How does that?
We're headed towards retirement as that goes.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
our dogs are kind of aging out at this point. But yeah, it's been an amazing ride. It's been wild.
So how did you get into that?
I don't know. We kind of just fell into it. Like, it was one of those things, like, I don't know if you noticed, but like I kind of wander through life and like, ooh, that's interesting, and
Yeah.
go check it out. But my wife and I, we have always, between the two of us, we've always had like some variant of a Siberian Husky, right? So sometimes mixed, sometimes not. And my wife had more than I did. But she always liked them, and I always thought they were cool. But we got one just as a pet for the kids when we're dog nerds. We've had a bunch of different dogs, right? So we had like Akitas, and we had a Saint Bernard, and we've had Shiba Inu. It's like a miniature
Oh,
Akita.
yeah, I've heard of those.
Yeah, there's some around town. They're kind of cool, but they've got a weird kind of edgy personality, and ours was super sweet. So
really?
yeah, she was really nice. So we've had a bunch. We had like an Irish Wolfhound Great Dane cross. Yeah, we just like dogs of any variety. But we've always liked specifically the Siberians, and we got one, and the kids really liked her, and we were like, well, she needs a buddy, so we got another Siberian to go with her. And then we're like, well, we have two. How many would it take to pull somebody? And yeah, from there we were just like, okay, so we've got two. Now what? And we started talking to people, and acquired another couple of dogs, mostly like rescued. Initially, we started with rescued and rehomed dogs, and that was an adventure because they have spicy personalities.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a learning experience for sure, because there's so many. When you're looking for an animal to do like a specific purpose, it's different than if you just, like if you just want a companion or you just want a buddy. And I don't mean to, make it seem like that's wrong or anything, but if you want it for something specific, you need to find whatever's not only capable of doing it, but wants to do it. And that's what we found with the whole thing. I think back in the day, dog sledding got a pretty bad rap because people, the gold rush days,
Right, yeah.
people didn't really, didn't treat animals well in general then. There were exceptions, but as a whole, we kind of exploited and used really hard. And they did a lot. They were just getting dogs. They didn't care about them. They were grabbing them from anywhere. They weren't purpose bred or anything. They were just like, they depleted. I forget what they said, but they, like, something like half the dogs from San Francisco got stolen.
Wow.
Because if they looked any size at all, they were like, yoink, and sent them up to the Yukon. So they stole dogs from like all over the place when the various gold rushes were on. And because they didn't know what to do, a lot of times they'd beat the dogs to make them go. They'd have them in crummy conditions. They wouldn't be given enough food and that sort of thing. And so the dogs, didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So I think people hear those kinds of stories of like them, dying on the trail and stuff like that. And they were overused, overworked, just like they did to horses and everything else. So it wasn't dog sledding specific, maybe. But yeah, but the people involved weren't caring like they should have been.
Yeah.
And people always go, well, how do you make them go? And it's like, well, there's like 4 things on a sled to stop the animals. There's nothing to make them go. They run because they love it. So like, there's no, in fact, if you want to like punish them, you just stop them. Yeah.
That's crazy.
All they want to do is run. So like, that's what they're about, is running. They live for it. They want to do it. And they kind of see themselves like a little wolf pack. Like, they're together as a pack and they're running. So they're hunting. Right. And then at the end of the trail, like whenever you stop, you feed them. So they've made their little kill and they eat, and then they want to lay down for a bit, and it's when you look at it, you're like, oh, okay, that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
And we used to, there's so many things that we learned as a result of it. Like it's a unique relationship with the animals. So, and that's why, like I said, the rescued and rehomed dogs weren't good for that, because a lot of them hadn't been properly socialized. Maybe they were rescued or rehomed because like they were just too hard for other people to handle. And people have an issue with Siberians. They're not a normal dog. They're not. And some, like we've seen one lady just down the road from us has one that is an off leash one, like super trustworthy. She actually has two that are super trustworthy. They run around off leash. One of the ladies, there's a lady in town here who breeds them, and she has like show Siberians, and she runs a little bit with them, and they're good dogs, and they listen a little bit better. But the like purpose bred work ones they're a different animal. They're like way higher prey drive. Can't have cats around them. Can't have small animals. No bueno.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's one of those deals where they have like just such a high prey drive. Because like where they come from, they're not really a breed. I guess it's, how do I explain it? Land race. So basically, like isolated in Siberia, why would you feed them? Like everybody has trouble getting food in the Arctic, right?
Right.
So why would you feed them if they weren't doing something for you? So in the summer times, they just turn them loose, and usually like they take them to like big islands, and like kayak them out there, and then leave them on the island.
What?
Yeah, and they'd be like, fend for yourselves, suckers.
That's crazy.
And then in the wintertime when the ice froze and they could smell town, they'd come back to town and they'd be like, well, everything's frozen. Time to feed you. Time to get to work. Let's do this, So they're used to fending for themselves for like thousands of years. They found a harness that was like, I think like a full done rawhide harness that was like 8,000 years old.
Wow.
Which means they've been using them as sled dogs for a very long time. And in that sort of geographic isolation, there wasn't a lot of other intermixture. So when you've got that long of like looking after themselves, they're really independent. They're not like, most dogs kind of, even when you see the obedience training and stuff, you'll see the dog like looking to you, right? Like they look to, like, what are you doing? Even herding dogs, right? Hunting dogs, whatever it is, they kind of look to you to like, what is it that I do? You don't want a dog that's running to be looking back at you.
Yeah.
It'll trip or get in the way of the other dogs, or, like
run into a tree.
Yeah, exactly. So, you want them to be independent enough that they're just like, I'm going for a run, and with my bros, you're just, so yeah, it's, you want them to be capable of doing that, but there's a level of sort of independence there that they're more resistant to training than other breeds. And yeah, they're very unique. So they're not really trustworthy off leash, because they just want to take off.
Yeah.
And like our dogs, we did like races up to 100 miles and like in 24 hours. So
wow.
Yeah. So we did race this guy in Montana, was our biggest race. We didn't do a lot of racing. We weren't like a big, we just kind of mostly did it recreationally, but yeah, like when you're running like that, the races are like, I think the first day is like it's supposed to be 52 miles, and then it's a little bit shorter the next day. But there's a 6-hour mandatory stop in the middle. But we were the last ones in. I messed up. I got us lost, and we got turned around in this horrible trail. And but yeah, I took like a 6-mile detour when it was all said and done, and for nothing. It cost us a whole bunch of time, and I was all bummed out. And I convinced myself that because it was rough, it was a rough trail. I convinced myself that the runners had burnt off, and that the dogs were like exhausted, and because they had to slog through awful punchy snow.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and I was beating myself up for my decision making, because the dogs knew where to go, and I was like, no, I'm pretty sure it's this way, and they were right. But yeah, and anyway, so we got lost and turned around, and we ended up being dead last. But we finished, so everybody else finished ahead of us, and we finished like exactly 24 hours.
Wow.
So, and that's, like I said, 6 hours mandatory stop in the middle, where you just feed them, massage them, and then let them sleep. And it's, so those kinds of races, like you like I said, you learn weird things about yourself, about the dogs, and like you just sleep in the check stop. Like they had a place where you could sleep, but I wanted to do it more old timey, so I had like 2 yoga mats in the bottom of the sled and a sleeping bag, and I just slept in the sled, literally in the sled.
That's so funny.
You just took the tug lines, the ones that go from the back of their harnesses, off, so they'd have a little bit of room to move around, and still had them clipped by their collars, and you just feed them, and they just curl up under the straw, and they just go to sleep.
Oh, I bet.
Even our young ones, we had young puppy yearlings that they were like a year and a half old that did that race, and they just saw what the older dogs did, and they were like, okay, this is how it's done, okay. And there's like other dog teams, and like the first one that comes in, they do their mandatory stop, and then they leave, right? So you've got people coming and going, and teams coming and going at all different times. So there's lots of noise and distraction, and our guys just slept there, just like we're good. So yeah, no, it's neat. It's a weird, and like, I don't know if like my daughter has this because of all our dog sledding, like very severe moose phobia. Of all the animals in the woods, I'm more scared of moose than anything else. Like, bears, cougars, they're nothing. Like a moose, that's terrifying.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen them on the road sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
They're not like they're huge. They're like some weird mutant horse with like shovel swords on its head. Yeah, like they're weird. Like they don't make sense. Like they can be really, really passive and mellow one day where they're like, they'll just let you walk by. Like you'll go by with a dog team and they're like, what's up? And then other times they'll like run away, and other times they'll want to stomp you. And there's just no, to us, I don't see any discernible pattern. Even the same moose. Some days it's like, you can be like, that's a friendly moose. And you're like, no, not today.
So have you been chased by a moose?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Multiple times. We've had so many sketchy moose encounters that people don't believe it. But they're on, like, we ran, most of our trails were like all the snow machine trails around here. Yep. So we've gone up Perry Creek, up Lumberton, up Moye. We did at nighttime, we'd go up the, the Snowmobile Club trails. Yeah. So we do that at nighttime sometimes. We go way out Gold Creek. I've been down to the border with the dogs and back. Yeah, we went all around here. Never went up the Bull with them, and never went up Wild Horse. But other than that, like everything out to the west of us, we've been on all of that. And yeah, so but no, the moose are like, they're horrifying. One night it was Super Bowl Sunday. I was on the backside of Cranbrook Mountain. Yeah. And it's a really steep climb. So it's about 3,200 feet to the top. Like if you go on the road that's on the backside. Yeah. And then it spills over to the Hog Creek side. And I had it was also a 32-mile trail. From the back of the South Star trails, you go around up Shed Road, and then up to the top of Cranbrook Mountain, over into the Hog Creek side, or Prudhomme Creek is what it's called. And then you drop down to Cotton Creek and then head out to Hog Creek, and then up the power lines and back. So it's 32 miles, and there was 3,200 feet of elevation in that. And yeah, on the backside of the mountain, dark. And we're going uphill, slogging in the deep snow. The dogs were really working, and then all of a sudden they just started really going hard. And I was like, something's not right. And then I could hear up ahead of me, I could hear like a huffing, like something breathing hard, but you can't see them. Like moose.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
They're like a horror movie.
Yeah. It's the weirdest thing. Like it got something about that. But I always scare some of the younger students that I have with some of these stories, and I don't mean to, but anyways, it's kind of funny, but I don't mean it to be scary, but it is. But yeah, no, this moose he was ahead of us, but in the headlight, like the headlamp. Yeah. Most of the time I run without the headlamp, because when you ski, like, do you ski?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so in the last few runs of the day, that weird flat light that covers over the little dimples in the trail. Yeah. And you sometimes like stumble a little bit. Yeah. If you can stumble on skis. Yeah. But that flat light, you miss the little dimples in the trail, right? And so you can have weird footing. The dogs kind of do the same thing with the light coming from behind on them. So normally I'll shut the headlamp off and just use whatever ambient light is there. Yeah. Unless, there's been very few nights that aren't real, because the dogs can see in the dark. Right? Yeah. And whatever light there is, especially reflected off the snow, it just amplifies the light. So, and the best are those moonlit nights where the full moon's so strong it's throwing a shadow on the gang lines. Like it's awesome. I love those nights. So but they're also some of the coldest nights. So for whatever reason, it's just those are the best nights because it's cold and the dogs want to run. But yeah, no, you go up. I was up there, and like I said, we were gaining on this thing, and I was like, as soon as I heard the huffing, I was like, oh, this is gonna be. And it was a young bull moose, and he was ahead of us, just charging. And thankfully, at the last second, he chose to leave, but the dogs like lunged at him twice, and he kicked once over their heads and then dove off the trail. And that was it. And we kept running like we were still chasing him afterwards. But that was a very minor event. But we had one on Perry Creek where I'd gone up. I think it was only an 18-mile run, so they were still pretty fresh. And I went up, turned around on the trail, and came back. And we were 2 miles. Everything with dog sledding is in miles. Yeah. So you have to relearn that if you're Canadian, and all the Americans are just like, what? It's normal. But getting used to doing everything in miles is weird too. And but yeah, 2 miles from the truck, and same thing. I could hear this huffing, and I was looking around because moose are weird. Their hair doesn't reflect light like some animals do, and even their eyes are kind of dull. So especially in a headlamp beam, and we have like really bright headlamps. Yeah. Most of the time you only see them because there's something darker ahead of you. Like the night's just darker up ahead, and you're like, oh, this is problematic. Yeah. But yeah, this cow moose jumped on the trail directly in front of my team. So she had been on a ridge just above us, and she hopped off this weird little ridge right in front of us. And the team was running along because they knew something was close. They could smell her. Yeah. Right. So they were really going. And she just jumped, and she was sideways, and she post-holed into the snow. Right. So it was like right in front of the dogs. And the dogs, like my 2 leaders, just turned and looked at me like, goodness, food just fell from the sky. And they were so excited, but they looked at me and then like lunged at her. And she had managed to kind of get up onto harder ground and was cooking down the trail. But my 2 lead dogs were hanging from her butt. Like they had their teeth like locked in her butt, and they were both hanging from her. So she was pulling us, and the rest of the team was trying to get to her. So it got weird quickly, right? And then she dove off I don't know if you've been up Perry Creek, but there's one spot where it's like a cliff, and she just went right off of that. And the team, like I was like, I could kind of see that coming because they're so long. A 12-dog team is really long. Yeah. Right? It's like longer than a transport truck. Yeah. So there's these, like, it looks like an anchor. They call it a snow hook. And I jammed both of those in, and she was pulling so hard. And the rest of the team was working so hard to get to her that it was just throwing up snow. Like it wasn't stopping us at all. And there's a piece of snowmobile tread that you stand on just to kind of feather the speed. Yeah. And I was standing on that and like wrenching down on it, trying to put all my weight on it, and I couldn't stop them. And they went over the cliff, and I was just watching pair after pair of dogs go over the cliff, like, and like it was finally the last set of dogs. We stopped just as they went over. We stopped dead. And I think the leads must have let go of the cow. Yeah. They must have just let her go and realized like, oh, this sucks. Cause so it was, and then the weirdest part was like trying to figure out like, what am I going to do now? Because the dogs are yelping, they're kind of hanging in their harnesses, like freaked out. And so I was grabbing them and like it was just the wheel dogs, the 2 back dogs. It still hadn't quite gone fully over. So they just backed up. And so I was grabbing the rest of the team and just kind of throwing them up as, while their weight's pulling them down. Yeah. So I was just grabbing them and shuffling them back like this. And then all of a sudden I heard some yelping, and I looked, and like there was a big fight. They were all tangled up in the lines and everything else. And it was like, but the wheel dogs, the 2 last dogs, were still they still wanted to eat the moose. So they still kept trying to pull forwards while I was bringing the other dogs up, and the other dogs were happy to get away. And these guys were like, no, we got to go get the moose. So it was really weird, and they started getting cranky with each other. So there's a big fight, and it finally like getting them, trying to throw them side to side, and then untangle all that, and then get them pointed in the right direction. And it was a nightmare, and it was like hours longer than it needed to be when it was all sorted out. And that's where my wife, like, she's like, when are you going to be back? And I'm like, what, from all the stupid things I do in the woods? Yeah. And I'm like, dark o'clock. Don't know what to tell you, but dark o'clock. So moose are terrifying. Yeah. Well, that's really cool. Yeah. It's crazy that you just like got some dogs and you're like, oh, I mean, we got some dogs, like, why not? Yeah. That's just mind blowing.
for me.
Well, we got two rescue boys, the Rowdy Reds we called them, Copper and Iron, and they needed a home. They were young, and people thought, well, just putting miles on them will be good.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, we can put miles on them. And yeah, they were not good. And the first two dogs that we had weren't from like working lines. They were just like pet dogs, which they're cute, they're fun. We still have the one at our place. She's getting old now. She's headed to 16 real quick here.
Ooh.
But yeah, no, they're and she's still kicking around. She's blind, but she's still doing super well. Like running around the yard still, and you're still trying to escape.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we figured if we have a couple, we may as well do something. And we had, 3 kids, and so it was like, let's get into it. Let's take them for a rip.
How many dogs do you have right now?
We only have 8.
Only 8?
Yeah, only. So we're way down. At one point, we had 17 at our place. So we're down to 8. So some of them, when we realized we were kind of getting out, we sent other runners and that sort of thing, and then some just kept because we like them so much.
Yeah.
There's a few that aren't going anywhere. So, and some were older, and some had some behavioral issues. Like we wouldn't want to send them to anybody else.
Yeah.
So, and you can't trust. Like we found some good homes for some of the other ones, like that have gone. The one guy is a young guy who's outside all the time, and he loves the one girl that we gave him. And there's a couple in Sparwood that have had 2 of our dogs, and when they kind of age out from running, so. Yeah. And they decide, right? Like I keep saying that, like the first one that we had that was ready to retire was 11, and he just, when he turned 11, like he was always one of the first ones up. He was we got him from she was a lady in Edmonton she's the only Canadian woman to have ever run the Iditarod with it's like a 1,000-mile race. Wow. With purebred Siberian Huskies. So the only Canadian woman to do it with purebred Sibs. And she did it multiple times. So she had incredible animals. Yeah. They're amazing. And what they were capable of was amazing. And as soon as we got the first one there, Shooter, it was like, we all of a sudden we thought we had dogs that could do really well. But then we got him and we're like, this is what they're capable of. Yeah. And she was like, he's no kind of leader. And after a year with us, he basically took over as leader. He was like, no, you need my help. He's like, all of you need my help. So let's go. But yeah, when he was 11, the one day I went out with the harnesses, and normally, like, if they see a harness, like, they go crazy. Yeah. Like, they're barking and jumping around. And so, yeah, one day I came out with the harnesses, and everybody else was going absolutely berserk. And he was just like, he looked at it, and then he went back in his doghouse. Like, Shooter, buddy, what's up? Like, this is weird. And he came out and wanted to be petted. Tail was wagging. And as soon as I brought the harness, he was like, nope, like went right back in the doghouse. And I was like, so I went in and told my wife, I was like, Cassie, like, Shooter retired today. Like he's done. So when they don't want to run, they don't want to run. When they do, they do. And if you push them too hard when you're running them, they'll just quit. Like they'll just stop. And some professional runners have had that happen where like in the middle of nowhere, a team has just been like, you pushed us too hard. You haven't given us breaks. We haven't had enough snacks. We're going on strike. And they just lay down. And they'll lay down till they feel like they want to move. And thankfully we never pushed hard enough to see that happen. But yeah, that would be terrifying in the woods.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Can you imagine? Late at night too.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is we run a lot of times at night. A, it's colder. B, there's less people. Yeah. Right? And we run less into like people with their pets that are loose. Because like there's enough force in those lines. Like mushers humans in Alaska and stuff like have had like arms or hands, like legs even amputated when they got tangled in the line and then the team pulled it tight. Yeah. So there's enough force that you could just shear a leg off easy. So yeah, it's an unbelievable amount of power. So yeah, you want to be careful with that. So if somebody's pet dog like jumps into the team, and especially when we had like a working team with like intact females and males, like breeding animals, the boys would be really protective, and the girls would get cranky towards any other girls. So if there was a girl dog that was in heat, they'd get grouchy and go after them. And when they'd go after them, you now have 12 dogs that think they're a pack that are like, we're gonna get your dog, we're gonna mess him up, and you're like, no, it's gonna be bad.
Please no.
So a lot of times, and people have been fantastic around here. So there's been some horror stories with people like snow machiners, that kind of thing, right? And pets. Most people around here, if like almost everybody that we've encountered, we've been like, we'll stop our team and be like, hey, nothing against you, but could you just pull your dog off to the side of the trail and we'll just go right past? And they're like, will they go by? And most of the time we're like, if your dog is under control, like not loose, we can get past you. Like, and we just say hike, which is the command to go, and they just.
So how fast are you even going there?
It depends. We had one of our kids' friends came along, and he's a big snow machiner. And we went dog sledding, and one time we were tearing like on a flat stretch and like really going, and he was like, "Can we go faster?" And we were like, "This is so fast!" But everything's relative, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, we were averaging, like when we're going long places, somewhere between 7 and 9 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And that's your kind of traveling speed. And that's the thing, is we did longer distance. We could do a lot faster than that, like in the sprints. But I never actually bothered to look what our top end was. But most of the time when you're traveling, so it's like a comfortable fast jog for a human.
Okay.
Right. Well, 8 miles an hour is pretty fast. Like if you do 8 on a treadmill, like that's yeah. But for them, like it's just a comfortable lope, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we strive to maintain. Was somewhere I'd love to have maintained like 10 for any time, but yeah. I think we recorded a couple times like 21 miles an hour. But
Wow.
those were, when they were fresh and good trail and
Right.
all that sort of thing. Yeah. Most of the trails around here, because they're snow machine trails, they're fairly soft.
Yeah.
So a lot of the race trails, they've hardened them up, they've groomed them really well and that sort of thing. So you can run better on that. It's like a human on a prepared track versus.
Yeah, exactly.
So running in sand.
Yeah. So you're a middle school teacher?
Yes.
So,
well, now that's changed.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were a middle school teacher, and were you also elementary school?
Yep.
And so what are you doing now?
Now I'm back to elementary. I'm back at Amy, which is kind of been my home school, if you want to say that. I've taught at almost all the schools, but in town here. Yeah. But I started actually, my first assignment here was at Laurie, and then I was at Baker for 4 years, just temp contracts at Baker.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So I've been to a lot of the schools.
Yep.
But yeah, now I'm back, and it's this year I've got really, really young kids. I'm a little scared. But I've got like 1s and 2s this year. Dang. So that's that'll be a challenge. It'll be weird. Little kids are interesting. They're weird. Not in a bad way.
So how long have you been a teacher?
Since 2006 or longer. So not
when I was born.
Okay, so super long. For me, it seems like seconds ago. Like honestly, it's so weird. Like my daughter graduated this year, right? Yeah. And for me, it does not seem like very long ago that I was at all graduating. Yeah. So to be like, dang, she's graduating. She's so old. That means I'm so old. It's weird.
Even I feel like that, and I'm not even graduated.
Nothing ages you quicker than kids. Like little kids. Like if you see them, like my brother's kids and that sort of thing. If you haven't seen them in any amount of time, like 6 months.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're like, what happened to you? You changed so much.
Yeah, that was like one of my cousins. Her name's Nora, and a few years ago, I guess, she was like 4, and now she's like 9 or 10. I think she might even be 11.
Yeah.
Like, what?
You're like, how did that happen?
And she seems like she's still 4.
Yeah.
Like it seems like nothing has changed. In my opinion, like for me.
That's the weird part, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're still treating her that way, and she's like, "Dude, I'm 9. Yeah. Like, I'm independent."
Yeah, and I like heard so many stories about her, and I'm like, "How is she doing these things?"
Yeah.
Like apparently she's doing like super good in school, and like basically school's like boring for her. Because she's really smart. And that's why I think she's still 4, is because when she was 4, she was as smart as she is like now.
Oh yeah,
like, she's just crazy fast learning and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just like it just blows my mind every time I see her. I'm like, you're still like, are you 5 or?
Yeah, it's weird. That's it. Time is a weird thing.
Yeah. So, why did you want to become a teacher?
I don't even know. When some of my honestly, like when some of my former teachers said I was not a good kid in school. Oh, I was a bad kid. And some people say that, but like I was a bad kid. Like my family moved a lot, and not for any particular reason. They just like everybody's like, "Were you an army brat? Were your dad in the RCMP or something?" I was like, "No." They're like witness protection. I was like, "No, we just moved a lot."
Yeah.
And anyways, yeah. So I did a lot of schools, a lot of different provinces, and my wife and I are a lot like that. Like we lived in almost all the same places. We like basically our entire lives like chased each other back and forth across the country without meaning to. You know,
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's super weird. Like I lived in Thunder Bay. She lived in Pickle Lake. She lived in Kimberley. I lived in Elkford. Like it was really weird. She was right in downtown Toronto. I was in Brampton, which is a small city like just outside.
Yeah.
So we've been in all the same places like back and forth our entire lives, and it's weird. But yeah, I honestly think if I have to quantify why I wanted to be a teacher, I honestly believe it's an apology. Like, it's the most sincere way I can say sorry to my teachers. Like I really believe that's what it is.
So what's your favorite part about being a teacher?
I don't know. There's a bunch of things. Like it's an interesting job. You never know what you're getting, right? So like with a given classroom, you never know what you're getting, and it's a lot like the dog team. You know, there's the good ones, there's the bad ones, there's the cranky ones, there's the happy ones all the time, right? Like there's that whole mix of miscreants and deviants and good ones and ne'er-do-wells, and it's all mixed together, right? And you never know year to year what you're getting. And then even day to day, because their lives are changing, right? Like everybody has things happen, right? Like kids, there's parents making up and breaking up and all that kind of thing, right? There's all those sorts of things that happen, weird family dynamics, you know, relatives passing away, like there's always something happening. Dogs, you know, like some kid will be crying, what happened? Oh, my goldfish died. And, you know, and you're like, and for them, it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Right. So, and yeah, so you never really know what you're walking into. So one day you'll have somebody who's like, that kid can be relied on for all these sorts of things, you know, and then one day, nope, not reliable. And you're like, okay, well, why? Right. And if you dig deeper, usually there's some kind of something happen. So you don't know what to expect. And the other thing is like you plan these lessons. You're like, I'm going to do this thing on the gold rush. It's going to be awesome. We're going to go outside. And then like the kids run off, you know, and like, or get stuck in the dirt or something. And you're like, what should I do? And you're like, oh, it's the me show. I have to do something about this mess that's happening. Like, I created it. I have to do something with it. It's gone off the rails. Nothing's happening like it's supposed to. And you're like, I have to clean this up somehow. I have to salvage it, you know? And it's, so those things, never knowing what you're walking into, I actually kind of like that.
Yeah.
So, and from year to year, some classes are really high academically, some are really low, some there's lots of unique behaviors. And one year, one of my classes at Amy, they drew me, there was piles of really artistic girls.
Oh yeah.
And they drew me as everything, as an aardvark, as like a skunk, as like, and one girl loved to draw me as My Little Ponies. So there was like piles of me as different My Little Ponies, usually like with like glasses and like whatever the mark is on their butt would have like a calculator and a ruler or something, you know, like all the time. So you never know what you're getting, right?
Yeah.
And they always, yeah. So, and there's some stories that I want to tell, but I'm like, this is going out to the world, so I don't know if I should without their permission. Like there's one about Abby. I'd love to tell, but I'm not sure I should.
You can tell me after.
Yeah. You probably already know it. But
true.
yeah. But yeah, so there's just things like that where, yeah, and you get weird little in-jokes, right, with the kids based on your year and that sort of thing, and sometimes with the parents based on things that have happened. So.
Oh really?
Yeah. So, yeah, and when you accidentally set a kid on fire.
What?
Yeah, it was completely an accident.
How'd you do that?
It was a lesson that went horribly wrong. It was at one of the middle schools, allegedly. And yeah, it was a wonderful kid, but I had a thing with potassium, and it may or may not be why we don't have potassium at schools anymore. But this kid got a hold of, surreptitiously, without my knowledge, got a hold of, and I like the kid. He's a good kid, but I won't say names at all. But yeah, one year he got a hold of a chunk of potassium, and he tried to, I don't know, I don't know if he thought he'd use it at home or what, right? But potassium reacts really violently with water.
Yeah.
Any amount of water. And he had it in his pocket, and he was a little sweaty because he knew he shouldn't have it, and his pocket lit on fire in the middle of class. So
that's
that
kind
was
of an awesome story. That's kind of
well, I ended
set
up
myself on fire.
Yeah, but I had to say that one thing like no teacher wants to say to a kid. Like I got him out in the hallway really quickly, and I was like, "Take your pants off!" And it was like it was weird. So because they were on fire,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're just like, dude, you gotta shed that stuff.
I mean, you got to get rid of the potassium somehow.
Yeah, it's bad because it's gonna burn till it's all used up, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know that you might be able to smother it. I don't know. You definitely don't want to add more water to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And it might have been because, yeah, I told a story about some bad kids at one of my schools prior to that who got a hold of some potassium. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And did some bad stuff at their school. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, again, some of these stories, I'm like, I probably shouldn't tell some of these stories. This is why I like being a teacher, though, because you have stories like that can't be told on air.
How do you even get that much potassium? Like,
you don't need much.
But how do you get it in general? Like, how do you even?
Well, you order it from like chemical supply places, right?
Really?
So like, yeah, like you know how like a science lab for a school,
Yeah,
can order all kinds of stuff, right? Like you could order
That's
it as an independent person. You could order it. There's probably a bunch of reasons why you might need it, right? Just like any of the any of the salt, mineral salts.
Yeah.
All of them react pretty violently with water. Sodium, right?
Yeah.
So there's a number of reasons a private citizen might acquire that, and yeah, they usually come packed in oil, right? So that there's no water contact, and but yeah, because it's entertaining when it meets water.
Did you hear about the? I'm sure you have, where I don't know if it was a student or something, but basically they like blew something up because they like made some reaction that they weren't supposed to in science class, and then some teacher like ran out because they like realized, and it had a reaction time. They realized, and they like grabbed the thing and they ran it all the way outside, and then blew up in their face.
Oh, I thought you were going to say there was one where they tried to put the fire out. And I forget what they did. Like maybe they tried to smother it, maybe with paper towel. I can't remember. But it was like they lit the lab on fire.
Oh wow!
So that's where I thought you were going with that one.
Yeah, but there was one. I'm not even sure if it was here. It might just be a story that they tell kids to make sure they don't do bad stuff.
I'm sure it happened. I'm sure, like honestly, with the way things happen in a classroom, I'm sure that did happen. Actually, I'm absolutely certain of it. So because there's just, like I said, you're dealing with a bunch of really unique personalities, right?
Yeah.
And you see from year to year, you see new ones all the time. So it's there, and there's always something like some people have some real specific triggers, right?
Oh yeah.
And that would seem fairly like it wouldn't seem problematic, right?
Yeah.
But then and it's because the volume of people. Like if you're at one of the middle schools, you're teaching like 90 plus students a year, right?
Yeah.
So every year that's like 90 plus students.
Right, yeah.
Right? So, and that's one of my big challenges, learning names.
Oh, yeah.
With names.
Me
I've
too.
moved so much, and
Oh, yeah.
and then the year after year of kids, and I usually remember faces, but again,
same.
they get older and they change. Sometimes, not all of them, but yeah.
Even at work. Hope no one at work is watching this.
Yeah, allegedly.
There's a bunch of people that I have no idea, and we're like good friends.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're like, hey, dude.
And they're like, because you get the sheet of like these people are working this times.
Yeah.
And so I see all the names, but they don't come with the faces, you
Yep,
know? So there's some, I've learned a bunch. I'm honestly surprised at myself and
Good
how
for
many
you.
people.
Every day I see improvement. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty bad though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm bad like that. I'm just like, "Hey, how's it going?"
Yeah.
And and then they'll come up with, they'll one up you. They'll be like, "Yeah, Adam, so." And you're like,
Yeah.
"Frick."
Yeah.
And like I know this person, but I'm like,
There's people at school that know my name, and I don't even know who they are. I'm like, what?
That's all. It's because
Hey,
of this
Hudson.
podcast.
It's like,
It's this podcast. That's what it is.
I bet. Yeah.
You can lump it all on the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody knew you before that.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get a little philosophical.
Okay, deep.
I
Like
like.
if I had a beard, I would stroke it at this point.
Me too. Me too. I'm trying.
You should rock that thing. Yeah.
If you can't tell. If you can't tell.
That'd be awesome. Just not the creeper stash. Stash and a mullet. It's too stereotypical. Like it's too. Yeah, it's too 70s.
I know. I need to become a dad first.
Yeah,
and then,
yeah.
And then everything else will come.
Yeah. Then yeah, definitely.
All right. So, what is or will be your gift to the world?
I'll die and be worm food. I don't know. I can be really annoying. I don't know if it's anything. So okay, I see what you're saying. I'm like, well, my gift to the world is. I don't know. I just like to encourage people to like, don't do things just because you think you have to. I think you guys, as a younger generation, like everybody wants to like crap on the younger generation. Kids these days, like there's an Assyrian tablet from like 5,000 years ago, and it complains that the kids read bad novels, they listen to crappy music, and they're disrespectful to their parents. So if that was 5,000 years ago, it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
But I think you guys, that's one of the things going to grad this year really cemented in my head was there's a lot less pressure in some ways. And I'm sure you guys still feel like pressured, right?
Oh, yeah.
To produce and perform and everything. But like just simple things, like it was just so expected when we went to grad that it was boy, girl, and you had to have a date and you had to show up with that date. And there was like weird pressures that way. Whereas what I saw was like people like the grad walk, right? Out at St. Eugene there. It's such a beautiful setting.
Oh yeah.
But like seeing them, like some kids were like, nah, this is my day. I'm walking on my own, right? And they were like, I graduated. It wasn't my date. It wasn't anybody else. Like I graduated.
Yeah.
I'm walking alone. And then others were like, I want like my friends with me. So they just walked with friends.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like, and there's there wasn't that like really heavy outside pressure. And it was so neat to see so many of the kids just be like, yeah, some of those old sort of cultural norms, some of which are good, but that kind of constricted you to do things that maybe you didn't need to, but it was just like expected. There's less of that kind of pressure, I feel like, on you guys.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong. I could be reading it wrong, right?
Yeah.
But it seems to me that there's less of that, at least, than there was when we were growing up. So I don't do things that you don't. Every now and then you have to do things you don't want to do. But don't be, that's once in a while, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't like working out. I work out because it's good for me. It keeps my old creaky stuff working, right?
Yeah.
I don't love it, but I know it's good for me and I do it, right?
Yeah.
But don't do things that you don't want to do because you think it's expected.
Right.
Like do and get out and do dumb things in the woods. Like just do dumb things that don't make any sense. Like if one day like you're like Cranbrook Mountain, I've always wanted to climb that. It's there. I've always wanted to climb it. Go do it. Like what is holding you back? So, and when you do that, there's some Japanese principle. I don't know what it is. I'd mangle it if I tried to pronounce it, but it's basically like, one of the various traditions is that I firmly believe this, is that a minimum of once a year, you should go out in the woods and suffer. And that's all it is. It like makes you a better person. So they're like literally go out in the woods and suffer. And there's a term for it. You could probably look it up.
Yeah.
But it's like you basically like, and I think it translates to like suffering alone or something. But it's like it's good for you to go somewhere and just do something that sucks. simply for the purpose of it sucking. And everything feels better. Like after that, your food tastes better, your bed is warmer, you appreciate a shower, like do that. Suffer in the woods once in a while. It's really good. And if you can drag somebody along to do it with you, so much the better. So just stuff like that. That's what I think.
And secondly, do you have a message for the people? I mean, you already did. But is there anything, that you would tell, like, students of yours or future students?
like dad advice?
Yeah.
There's so many like inappropriate things that flashed in my head right now that I'm like, I don't know. Like play with fire, run with scissors, and no, I just one of the things that I always try to do is somebody asked me once, like, how do you see in an interview? They're like, how do you see your role as a teacher? And I was like, I want to say sensei. I was like, they're like, what? And I'm like, I want to provoke you. So I'll like deliberately say things that I know aren't 100% right. And then the kids will be like, 2 days later, a week later, Mr. Buck, I looked that up. You're wrong. And like the middle schools and the high schools especially, like they'll let you know right now. They'll be like, what? Like all of a sudden you'll say something like, and according to 3 sites, that's garbage. And I'm
actually,
like, got you. And they're like, what do you mean got you? And I'm like, you cared enough about something I said to actually see if it was legit or not. And so like I provoked you into learning something accidentally. Would you have looked that up on your own? No. So, and the other thing is that, okay. Now, sorry, you got me rolling now. That's a problem. But that's one of the things I think right now, I don't know, this is my apolitical message for the young people out there. Right now, I see a lot of divisive garbage, right? Like a lot. And it seems to be that it seems like people are getting sucked in whether they realize it or not. And it's like almost being forced to pick a side. Right. And as soon as you like say allegiance to one thing, right, or say something good about one thing, right away people from the other camp will jump on you, and then that gives you the natural reaction to distance yourself more from those people, right? Yeah. And they become those people, right? Somebody other, right? And there's a lot of demonization, and then things get weird. Most of the time, the majority of people are in the middle anyways. And what the internet and stuff has allowed is some of the more radical voices on either side to be amplified, maybe more than they would naturally, like just in a conversation with people or in a group of people, right? Those really extreme voices are being amplified to the point that people think this side is this really real extreme and this side is this real extreme. When in truth, probably most people are somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And don't get sucked into ridiculous conversations with people online. Like there's so many times there's something that I love and somebody will make some stupid statement. Like it's really ridiculous. Like there's no such thing as a dumb question. Yeah, there is. But don't get sucked into these weird, trivial things. And especially if it's political, like it just gets weird. You get tribal about it and then you want to defend your point. And it's, when it comes down to it, it's meaningless stuff to get us. You want to get angry about something, get angry about the price of gas right now.
Yeah.
Like if you want to get angry about something, get angry about the way laws are passed where you have very little say in them and they affect everyone. The people who you like their opinion and the people who you don't. Back in the day, people were like, people who served, like I never did, but people who served in the military, right? Who are like, I'll die for your right to say the stupid thing that you're saying. Right, you have a right to say the dumb thing that you're going to say, right? And I'll defend your right to say it. I'll disagree with it, but I'll defend your right to say it. We're losing that. It's starting to be like, you said the thing I don't like. You need to be quiet now, and that gets really weird really quick.
Yeah, it's like cancel culture.
Yeah,
like
yeah, and it's weird because there's kind of both camps too, right? And there used to be sayings like, how do you know a politician is lying? Because they're talking, right? And it's, and that's not to say that all politicians are bad, but power has a way of getting weird, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, lots of people want to change, right? You get into it to change, but it's bigger than you, and it's hard to make change, and the machine grinds slowly, and there is undeniable corruption, and. So it's kind of one of those things where it's very easy to get baited into these little side things that in the end don't really matter, and you get bogged down in them, you get tribal, and you get weird, and you get sucked into a really freaky camp, you know, when really you should be looking kind of, if this person's saying that and that person's saying that, then the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, and that's where you should be probably aiming for, versus those real extremes.
Yeah.
And just let people say dumb stuff. Like it's like, it's better than driving that underground. Let people say the dumb thing they're going to say, because if you drive it underground, you're not, if I argue with you, I doubt I'm going to change your mind in an argument.
Yeah.
Like I doubt, if I get all yelly and in your face, I doubt I'm going to change your mind.
Yeah.
But if I give you some facts and leave you with them, nowadays you can argue it, is it a fact?
Yeah.
Right? But if I just leave you with some facts and I'm nice about it, and you're like, nah, Adam's a decent guy, right? And I'm not too drivey with it, you're much more likely to be receptive to that.
Yeah.
But if I freak out and yell at you, you'll be like, that guy's a jerk. I don't need to listen to him. You know, plus he said the thing I don't like to hear, right?
Exactly.
Even if it's true, right?
Yeah.
So, that's what you're seeing, is this weird divisive, like, even if it's true, you could debate what that is. People get bogged down in arguing, and even bogged down in, is it true or not, versus, okay, but is it kind? Does it matter? Is it helpful?
Yeah.
Right? And is this something we should be wasting a lot of time on? Or is there other, like, do we have more pressing concerns right now than that?
Yeah.
So don't get bogged down into weird stuff. Let people say the dumb thing that they're going to say, and don't get rid of family members, like cut them out just because they said something you didn't like. Like, you know, family dinners, it was hysterical. You know, Grandpa would come and rant and rave, and you'd be like, "Ooh, Grandpa, you know, we don't say that anymore." You know, and you explain why, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now people are like, "Grandpa said the thing. No more dinners at Grandpa's." Right?
Exactly.
And then you end up losing in that, because I firmly believe everyone has something to teach you, even if it's, don't be like that person. Like, there's something, if you talk to somebody for long enough, there's always something valuable that they've got to say, even if they're a disagreeable person, even if they have kind of a yucky personality. Like, they have something to teach
you. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why I started this podcast anyway. Like, it's just because I feel like everyone, like, you know, has something, you know, we're all different people. I feel like it's interesting to, like, let them say what they believe and, you know, express their emotions and, you know, their passions and stuff like that. So
I hope you continue that. I hope that's something that, I think it's genuine to just let people do their thing, and you're proof that the kids are going to be all right. Yeah, but there was a guy years and years ago. He used to have a radio station, and he would just let people say the craziest things. So they'd call in all the time, and he never judged. His name was Art Bell. He had it was a podcast before it was a podcast. It was a radio show, right? Yeah. And he used to broadcast. It was like somewhere in the Nevada desert or something. I guess he had some like desert homestead or something, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I worked as a security guard at night, and in one factory in Calgary. And the other guard that I was with loved it. And he turned this Art Bell show on all the time. And it was like late night for like hours. Yeah. And like his topic, he'd be like, today my topic is aliens. And people would call in and be like, aliens. Today my topic is ghosts. Skunk apes. Are they real? You know, and then we're going to talk to a couple people who claim to have had dinner with them, you know, and like, and somebody come in and he'd be like, so you had dinner with a skunk ape? And they're like, yes, I did. They're 8 feet tall, smelled like a sack of garbage. They're friendly, you know, dropped a lot of bugs in my house. And he just let them talk. And he'd be like, oh yeah. So, and he just facilitate, like the way you're doing, facilitate a conversation from them, get their whole story, no judgment. And then he'd be like, well, next week we'll have, you know, but it was never like, man, that person was messed up. Can you believe they said that? You know, it was always like, he'd always just be like, really? Okay. And what proof do you have of that? Yeah. What did you see? Like, do you have video? Did you record it? Like, oh, so you have a recording of sounds of a Sasquatch? Cool. You know, like, and he just let them deliver their truth.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. And you don't see that now because even the news now, it's like nobody says, oh, there was a car crash at the Moye Bluffs. They're like, it's a car crash at the Moye Bluffs because patriarchy or because, you know, like whatever, right? Because climate change. And you're like, or was it just a car accident? Like, just tell me about the accident, right? Like, don't add like a spin to it. And
don't
maybe
blow everything up.
And maybe it was due to the weather, right? Or whatever, but you don't like, things are increasingly, there's editorialized rather than just and I think if you allow people to just give their 2 cents and be like, have a good night, the less judgment, the more genuine stuff you'll get. And some of it will be wacky.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
The crazy people.
Yeah.
I mean, every podcaster, apparently, allegedly, every podcaster has a bunch of crazy people that come on just because they...
Oh, it's inevitable.
Need people, you know?
Yeah, it's inevitable. Like, sooner or later, you'll get... I'm like, okay, wait a minute.
Or you'll find out.
You've had so many people on. Am I one of the crazy ones? You got to be willing to entertain that option, right? Like, you're like, he's had a few people on. Oh, this isn't looking good for me.
Why are you asking me?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. When you were like, do you want to come on? I was like, oh, yes. Why? And then I was like, yeah, I'll just go anyway.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about?
No. No, I'll let you go to bed or whatever it is you do now.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's cool. This is really, you got a cool setup. You're moving along, and I really wish you every success. I hope this gets better and better for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is the new area.
The new studio's balling.
Yeah, you should have seen it before. It was bad.
I don't know. I saw the first 2 podcasts, and I was like, this is you're starting out.
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere, and you got to build, and yeah.
All right. I guess that's all.
Awesome. I did not pee. I just came from a river.